All right, Duncan Keith. What a guy, isn't he? He's a guy that I think so many NHL fans have extremely strong opinions about that I think it's kind of funny to talk about this kind of thing. Today we're talking about the Chicago Blackhawks, a team that wasn't really all too good this season. They started off the year pretty hot, but then they kind of fell behind. Now they're at a position where their best players you could debate are their younger players plus Patrick Kane, and they still have a boatload more of development to do with these younger players before they get back into a contender-like form. Now, it wasn't always like this in Chicago. They were a very good team 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago. They were out there winning Stanley Cups in 2010, 2013, and in 2015. But ever since the days where Taves and Kane got their contracts, which are pretty big today, after that 2015 Stanley Cup victory, the Blackhawks were never really in that same boat of success. One of the guys that was on that squad, helping them out winning all those Stanley Cups, was a guy named Duncan Keith, who today is an NHL defenseman, I guess, who's 37 years old, 6'1", 192 pounds. He's got a contract until 2023, which sees him making $5.538 million. Now, for a guy who won 2 Norrises in his career, one in 2010 and one in 2014, when he was a 60-plus point defenseman, in 2010 he almost had 70 points. Crazy to think about that. Even though he put up these numbers, you say to yourselves, okay, man, this is a guy who's got some production in him. How's he only making 5.538? That's crazy. Well, it's because the contract was signed in 2010, and it expires in 2023 when Duncan Keith is going to be about 40 years old. So yeah, he got a huge contract 10 years ago. He's still on it today. He was in his prime around the time the contract was signed and in the earlier stages, but now you're in a spot where the Blackhawks are no longer great. Duncan Keith is 37 years old. He's turning 38 in just a few days here, and I mean, he had 15 points in 54 games played. For a guy who was really gosh darn good. He was a really strong offensive defenseman, one of the best D-men in the entire league. He's the guy that a lot of people would compare Quinn Hughes to becoming in the entire, Pedersen, Kane, Horvat, Taves, and Hughes, Keith conversation with the Vancouver Canucks. And before anybody goes out there and criticizes me for that, hey, Pierre LeBrun spoke about that a few months ago back in the bubble last year when the Vancouver Canucks were actually good. Unfortunately, they're not good anymore, but hey, they're still there. So Duncan Keith was a very strong defenseman. He's the guy that a lot of people are saying, yeah, if Quinn Hughes hits his ceiling, he can be like Duncan Keith. He's got a Conn Smythe to his name, 3 Stanley Cups, not to mention the fact that he was named one of the 100 greatest players to ever play hockey. Yeah, he's got accolades. But now he's on the decline. You can no longer play Duncan Keith 30 minutes a night like you could in the postseason in 2015 when he had 21 points in 23 games despite playing all those minutes. He can't really man a power play the way he used to, and he's not producing anymore either. Which is why when Elliotte Friedman made this tweet the other day, it really went viral. There are rumblings that Chicago is working on a potential Duncan Keith trade to either the Pacific Northwest or Western Canada. The word is Keith and the team are working together to get him to go to a place he wants to go. We'll see where this goes. And right away, a lot of people looked at this and they were like, oh, Duncan Keith, he's on the trade block. And it's a very specific area of the world as well. Pacific Northwest. Okay, so that's like Portland, Tacoma, Seattle. Hey, there's a team in Seattle coming here. Seattle Kraken, maybe. And then you go a little bit up north. Okay, there's Delta, Surrey, Vancouver. Oh my goodness, there's a team in Vancouver as well. Then you have Western Canada. Okay, the Western Canadian teams. It's Calgary, it's Edmonton. Those are the Western Canadian teams. Could we see a Duncan Keith trade over to the northwestern side of the North Americas? This is really interesting, and for a lot of Canucks fans that were looking at this, they're like, man, okay, absolutely not. Jim Benning, please don't do this. The first reply on Elliotte Friedman's tweet, nothing to see here, Jim Benning, keep on scrolling. X-Tech, by the way, absolute beauty. Love that man. But for Canucks fans specifically, I wanted to talk about this here because Duncan Keith has a very bad relationship with the Vancouver Canucks. There's a reason why anytime the Blackhawks play in Rogers Arena and Duncan Keith touches the puck, they always boo the heck out of him. Because Duncan Keith, despite the fact that he is a top 100 player of all time as dubbed by the NHL, a 2-time Norris winner, a Conn Smythe winner, a Stanley Cup champion ×3, even though he is all of this stuff, he's still pretty nasty. And not in a good way. Duncan Keith has several highlights where he is down on the ice and he swings his stick to slash somebody in the face with full force. Yeah, that's happened several times. There was the entire Daniel Sedin concussion of the early 2010s that happened because of Duncan Keith. That was his own dirty play that took out Daniel Sedin and arguably shut down the goal-scoring version of Daniel Sedin back in 2012, 2013, something like that. I forgot, honestly, but it was around that time frame. So Duncan Keith, to Vancouver fans, is like the devil, or at least the cousin of the devil, the second cousin once removed of the devil himself. So when this tweet came out, everybody was kind of freaking out because, oh no, Duncan Keith and Vancouver, this would be a calamity. In fact, the first comment by Brody Film here on our Canucks when this tweet was posted, this is all a move orchestrated by Daniel Sedin, so he can pull a check the name tag, Grandpa, you're in my world, and bag skate the heck out of Keith at camp before cutting him. Obviously, that's a joke. Obviously, it's kind of petty, but that's where the direction lies with Vancouver Canucks fans and the conversations about Duncan Keith. Eventually, though, things were calmed down after a bit because we had Rick Dhaliwal, our very own, a very well-respected insider in Vancouver here, saying that he doesn't think Vancouver is the destination for a Duncan Keith trade, at least at the time of when the tweet was posted, which would be about 24 hours before this video is posted. And so, Canucks fans, calm down. Does not look like we're going after Duncan Keith. I know it would be a really strange addition. Firstly, having Keith and Daniel freaking Sedin working in the same organization, not to mention just having Keith as a Canuck in general. That sounds so weird to me, man. But also the fact that the Canucks on the left side are honestly pretty okay. I mean, Hughes is good, and we expect him to be better. Juolevi looks a little bit better than we thought he would have. Rathbone's still in there, too. Fantastic right there, not to mention Alex Edler, whom you still have to re-sign. So Duncan Keith would be one of the probable rotation guys in and out of that spot, whether you're in the top 4 or in the top 6 of your left side defense core. Now, I get it's probably redundant to expand more on this subject of Duncan Keith in Vancouver, but Patrick Johnson also reported that Duncan Keith's son and ex-wife live in Penticton, and Keith wanted to live closer to them near the end of his career, which is something that added even more fuel to the fire to the idea of Duncan Keith maybe coming to Vancouver before Rick Dhaliwal sent out this tweet. But now we talk a little bit about the other teams. Seattle? Duncan Keith to Seattle? Could this be a really nice cap acquisition move for the Kraken as an early move in their team's history? It could be. I mean, they have a cap floor to reach, don't they? And Duncan Keith making $5.5 million until 2023 certainly could help him out. Not to mention the fact that if you're going to draft a Luke Hughes or an Edvinsson second overall, I honestly think it would be a pretty good idea to have a guy like Duncan Keith mentoring this guy, telling him what it means to be a top defenseman in the NHL. He's been in the league for a long time, he knows what it takes to be a winner, a champion, and a star, so this could be a really good mentorship kind of guy for whichever defenseman you end up taking in the draft, if not other defensemen you acquire via other trades. Just probably avoid the slashing people in the face while you're lying down on the ice, and the dirty elbows too. Probably could do without that. So talk to me in the comments if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan, just the comedic value, I guess, of a Duncan Keith on the Canucks, which is probably not going to happen, but it still was a really hot topic yesterday, which is kind of why I wanted to go over it here in retrospect, just because of how funny it was. Also, if you're a Blackhawks fan, we know the Hawks are apparently super interested in Seth Jones and Dougie Hamilton. We'll make a video about that later in the week as things go on. But with Duncan Keith potentially heading out and one of these new guys coming in to be a replacement, what are your thoughts on a Duncan Keith potential trade? I know this guy was important to you for a long time, but he's at the tail end of his career and he's not as good as he used to be, getting paid the same amount of money as he did before. So, what are your thoughts? If it is his own wish that he wants to be closer to Penticton or wherever it is, then what does a trade look like? What does a trade with Seattle look like? What does a trade with Calgary or Edmonton look like? What does a trade with Vancouver look like too? Just kidding, I'm joking about that one. Don't answer that. I don't want to think about it. So, talk to me in the comments what you think. Duncan Keith on the move, Seattle, Vancouver, etc. It would be funny if we had Daniel Sedin telling Duncan Keith what to do, but hey, that's probably not going to happen. I hope you enjoyed this video. Trolls99, and bye.